The words engraved on the tiny brass key echoed inside my mind. Locker 27, Lagos Central Station. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The little key rested in my palm, yet it suddenly felt heavier than iron. It had survived 20 years. 20 years of lies. 20 years of betrayal. 20 years of people trying to erase my existence. If my mother had hidden this key so carefully, whatever waited inside that locker had to be important. Very important. Chief Adewale slowly took a deep breath. I searched for this key for 18 years. Everyone turned toward him. 18 years. I asked. He nodded. I searched every office, every house, every bank, every storage unit your mother ever used. He smiled bitterly. And all this time, he looked at the small brass key in my hand. It was inside a family photograph. Ngozi laughed softly through her tears. That sounds exactly like a Derby. I looked at her. My mother. Ngozi smiled. She loved puzzles. A small smile appeared on my face. The thought warmed my heart. For the first time, I wasn't hearing about court cases or inheritance. I was hearing about my mother as a person. She believed that people who truly loved you would always pay attention to the little things. She gently touched the photograph. She once told me, "If I ever disappear, my daughter will find me through my memories." Tears filled my eyes again. Even after 20 years. She had kept her promise. Papa B smiled proudly. "You got your mother's determination." Bintu laughed. "And her stubbornness too." Everyone chuckled. For the first time that night, the fear lifted. Only for a moment. But it was enough. It reminded me that this journey wasn't only about exposing evil. It was also about discovering love. The love my mother had hidden inside every clue she left behind. Suddenly, Chief Adewale became serious again. "We are leaving for Lagos at first light." The suited man immediately agreed. "The earlier we get there, the better." "But what if the people following us arrive first?" Bintu asked. Silence filled the room. It was a good question. A frightening question. Chief Adewale looked toward the window. "They already know about the photograph." He turned back toward us. "They'll guess the key leads somewhere." "Which means..." Ngozi finished the sentence. "We are no longer searching alone." A chill ran through the room. This had become a race. A race against people with money. Power. Connections. People who had spent 20 years protecting a deadly secret. The odds weren't in our favor. Yet strangely, I wasn't afraid anymore. 6 years in Mama B's salon had taught me patience. Years of carrying buckets before sunrise. Standing all day without resting. Smiling through pain. Walking without recognition. Had built something inside me. Strength. The kind no amount of money could buy. I looked around the room. At Papa B. At Mama B. At Bintu. At Ngozi. At Chief Adewale. This wasn't the family I was born into. But it was the family that had shaped me. And for the first time, both parts of my life were standing together. Not against each other. Together. That realization filled my heart with peace. The next morning, before sunrise, the compound looked unusually busy. Neighbors gathered quietly outside. Word had spread. Nobody knew the full story. But everyone knew something important was happening. Old Mama Esther from across the street walked toward me carrying a wrapped parcel. "My daughter." She smiled warmly. "You'll need food for the journey." Before I could thank her, another neighbor arrived. Then another. One handed me fresh fruit. Another gave bottled water. Someone else brought homemade snacks. Even children came running with handwritten notes wishing me good luck. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Years ago, these same neighbors had watched me silently sweep the salon every morning. They had watched me grow up carrying responsibilities no child should carry. Now, they stood together. Not out of pity, but out of love. Mama B suddenly burst into tears. I don't deserve this kindness. Old Mama Esther walked over. She gently held Mama B's hands. We all make mistakes. Then she smiled. But today, you're helping to correct yours. Those simple words broke something inside Mama B. She hugged me tightly. For several seconds she couldn't speak. Finally she whispered, Binta, I'm sorry for every birthday I forgot. I'm sorry for every dream I ignored. I'm sorry for every time I made you feel less than my daughter. Fresh tears rolled down both our faces. I hugged her back. For years I had imagined this moment differently. I imagined shouting, blaming, walking away forever. Instead, I found myself forgiving. Not because the pain wasn't real, but because carrying hatred had already stolen too many years from my life. I refused to let it steal another day. Papa B smiled proudly. My family is finally healing. Even Chief Adewale quietly wiped his eyes. Then he looked at me. I know I never replaced the years we lost. I nodded. I know. But I'd like the chance to earn a place in your life. I smiled gently. You already took the first step. His eyes filled with gratitude. No promises. No dramatic speeches. Just one honest beginning. Sometimes, that's enough. As everyone prepared to leave, Bintu suddenly ran back inside the house. I almost forgot. She returned carrying a small notebook. I found this under your old mattress. I frowned. My mattress. She nodded. The one you slept on when you first came here. Confused, I opened it. Inside were childish drawings. Little sketches. Hairstyles. Salon designs. Tiny dresses. Beauty schools. Dreams. Dreams I had drawn when I was 14. Dreams I had completely forgotten. One page caught everyone's attention. At the top, written in uneven handwriting, were the words, one day I will own the biggest beauty school in Nigeria, and poor girls will learn for free. The room became silent. I stared at the page. I had written that. I didn't even remember. Then slowly, I smiled. Not because of the notebook. Because I suddenly understood something. Long before money. Long before inheritance. Long before discovering my biological family. I already knew who I wanted to become. Life had buried the dream. But it had never destroyed it. Chief Adewale looked at me. What are you thinking? I closed the notebook carefully. Then answered with confidence I had never felt before. I'm not fighting for an inheritance anymore. Everyone looked at me. I'm fighting for every girl who thinks her dreams have already ended. A warm silence filled the room. Papa B clapped first. Then Bintu. Then Mama B. Soon the neighbors joined in. The sound echoed through the compound. Not because I had become rich. Not because I had found a hidden fortune. But because, after 20 years, the frightened little girl who arrived with nothing had finally found her voice. As the vehicle pulled away from the compound toward Lagos, I looked back through the window one last time. The small salon where I had spent 6 painful years grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared from view. I didn't feel bitterness. I didn't feel anger. I felt gratitude. Because that place had taught me how to survive. Now, life was about to teach me how to lead. And somewhere inside locker 27, a final secret was waiting. A secret that wouldn't just change my life. It would change the lives of thousands of young girls across Nigeria forever. And this time, no one would be able to silence the truth. The journey to Lagos began just as the first rays of sunlight painted the sky gold. As our vehicle rode away from the neighborhood, I looked back one final time. The small salon where I had spent 6 years of my life stood quietly in the distance. For so long, I had believed that place represented my prison. But now I saw it differently. It wasn't where my story ended. It was where my strength was born. I smiled softly and whispered to myself, "Goodbye, and thank you." Bintu, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand. No looking back. I smiled. No looking back. The road stretched endlessly before us. For nearly 4 hours, nobody talked much. Everyone was lost in their own thoughts. Papa B quietly watched the passing villages through the window. Mama B kept praying softly under her breath. Ngozi held my mother's letters close to her chest as though they were priceless treasures. Chief Adewale sat in silence, staring ahead. Perhaps wondering how different life might have been if he had found me years earlier. Then, just as we approached the outskirts of Lagos, Chief Adewale's phone rang. He answered immediately. "Hello." His expression changed. The color drained from his face. "What?" The rest of us immediately became alert. After listening for another few seconds, he ended the call. "What happened?" I asked. He looked directly at me. "They've already been to the station." The vehicle fell silent. "What?" "The locker." My heart almost stopped. "They found it." Chief Adewale slowly shook his head. "No. They are searching." Hope returned instantly. "They don't know which locker." The suited lawyer beside him smiled. "Then we're still ahead." The driver immediately increased speed. Traffic became heavier as we entered Lagos. Cars, buses, motorcycles, street vendors. The city was alive. Yet none of us admired the view. Every minute mattered. Every traffic light felt like an enemy. Every delay increased the chance that someone else might reach locker 27 first. Finally, the large sign appeared. Lagos Central Station. My heart pounded. This is it. The vehicle stopped. Before the doors fully opened, we were already stepping outside. The station was enormous. Hundreds of people hurried in every direction. Passengers dragged suitcases. Children laughed. Announcements echoed through loudspeakers. It was the perfect place to disappear. Or to hide something. Chief Adewale looked around carefully. "We stay together." Everyone nodded. The suited lawyer whispered, "Watch for anyone watching us." Those words immediately made me nervous. I glanced around. Nothing seemed unusual. But then, something caught my attention. Near a newspaper stand stood a man wearing a black baseball cap. Dark sunglasses covered his eyes despite the cloudy morning. He wasn't buying anything. He wasn't reading. He wasn't moving. He was watching us. The moment our eyes met, he quickly turned away. A chill ran through me. We are being followed. Chief Adewale casually looked in the same direction. The man had already disappeared into the crowd. He didn't panic. Instead, he smiled slightly. "Good." I stared at him. "Good. If they are following us." He pointed toward the station. "They'll never notice the others." The others? Before I could ask another question, 3 elderly women walked past us. They looked like ordinary travelers. One carried vegetables. Another held prayer beads. The third pushed an old suitcase. As they passed Chief Adewale, one of them nodded almost invisibly. He nodded back. I blinked. Who were they? Chief Adewale leaned toward me. My security team. I couldn't hide my surprise. Those women. He chuckled. The best investigators never look like investigators. Even Ngozi laughed. They've protected witnesses for years. I looked back. The women had completely disappeared into the crowd. It was brilliant. No one would ever suspect them. We entered the station. Locker numbers covered one entire wall. Hundreds of them. Rows upon rows of identical metal doors. I tightened my grip around the brass key. Locker 27. It sounded simple. Until we realized there were 4 different locker sections. Each section had its own locker 27. My heart sank. Which one? Silence. Nobody knew. The clue had led us here. But it hadn't told us where. Chief Adewale frowned. There must be another hint. I remembered my mother's words. Remember the song. The song. My pulse quickened. The song. Everyone looked at me. Ngozi smiled suddenly. The lullaby. What lullaby? The one your mother always sang. She quietly began humming. At first, it sounded like an ordinary Yoruba lullaby. Then she stopped halfway. Her eyes widened. Oh. What? The second verse. She closed her eyes, trying to remember. Then softly sang. When the morning train whistles. Chief Adewale gasped. The railway platform. Ngozi continued. My little star will always return home. Suddenly it all made sense. The platform lockers. We immediately ran toward another section of the station. Hidden beside platform 2 stood a much smaller locker room. Only 30 lockers. Numbered 1 to 30. My heartbeat thundered. There it was. Locker 27. Untouched. Dust covered the handle. No signs anyone had opened it in years. The brass key trembled in my hand. This was it. 20 years of waiting. 20 years of searching. 20 years of secrets. Slowly, I inserted the key. Click. It fit perfectly. Everyone held their breath. I turned it. The old lock resisted. Then, with a loud metallic snap, it opened. For a second, nobody moved. I slowly pulled the locker door open. Inside sat only one item. A faded blue backpack. Small. Old. Ordinary. At least it looked ordinary. My hands shook as I lifted it out. It was surprisingly heavy. Very heavy. Chief Adewale unzipped it carefully. Inside were 3 things. A thick leather diary. A bundle of sealed legal documents. And an old video cassette labeled in my mother's handwriting. For Binta's 21st birthday. The room fell silent. I stared at the cassette. A birthday message. My mother had recorded a message for the future. Believing one day I would watch it. Believing one day we would be reunited. Tears rolled down my cheeks. I almost never made it to 21, I whispered. Papa B placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. But God had another plan. Just then, a loud voice echoed across the station. Nobody move. We all turned. Standing at the entrance of the locker room were 6 armed police officers. Behind them walked a wealthy businessman whose photograph had haunted my nightmares. He smiled confidently. Slowly. Coldly. Then he looked directly at me and said words that made every heartbeat in the room stop. Miss Binta. I'm afraid that backpack belongs to my family. The station fell completely silent. And for the first time, the man who had stolen my past was finally standing face to face with the daughter he thought he had erased forever. The locker room fell into complete silence. Even the sounds of the busy train station outside seemed to disappear. 6 armed police officers stood at the entrance. Behind them, dressed in an expensive charcoal gray suit, polished shoes, and carrying the confidence of a man who had never been told no, stood Victor Lawson. The same face I had seen in newspapers. The same face in business magazines. The same face connected to every secret my mother had tried to expose. For 20 years, he had remained untouchable. Powerful. Respected. Admired. Yet as our eyes met for the first time, I noticed something that surprised me. Fear. Not much. Just enough to notice. It lasted only a second before he forced another confident smile. Miss Binta, he said calmly. I've been looking forward to meeting you. I tightened my grip on the blue backpack. So have I. Chief Adewale immediately stepped in front of me. You have no business here, Victor. Victor chuckled. Actually, I do. He casually adjusted his cufflinks before looking at the police officers. I reported that valuable family property had been stolen. The officer standing beside him cleared his throat. We received a complaint regarding documents belonging to the Lawson family. Chief Adewale laughed. A genuine laugh. So now you're hiding behind the police. Victor's smile never faded. I prefer to work within the law. Ngozi couldn't hide her anger. The law. You destroyed lives. Victor slowly turned toward her. I have no idea what you're talking about. His calmness was almost frightening. He spoke like a man who had rehearsed every sentence years in advance. Then he looked directly at me. My dear. I understand you've recently heard some unfortunate stories. But stories are not evidence. His eyes shifted toward the backpack. That belongs to my family. I finally spoke. No. The room became quiet. My mother left this for me. Victor sighed dramatically. I expected someone would fill your head with fantasies. My mother wrote my name on it. He smiled politely. People can write many things. My DNA cannot. That answer made his smile disappear. Only for a moment. But it disappeared. The lead police officer stepped forward. Everyone, please remain calm. He looked at me respectfully. Madam, may we see the contents of the bag? Before I could answer, Chief Adewale spoke. Absolutely not. The officer frowned. Sir, if these documents are connected to an active ownership dispute. They are connected to a murder investigation. The sentence exploded across the room. Every officer turned toward Chief Adewale. Victor's expression hardened. Very slightly. But I saw it. The officer blinked. Mother. Chief Adewale slowly removed my mother's handwritten letters from his briefcase. My wife predicted her own death. He held up the first letter. She specifically wrote that someone intended to kill both her and our daughter. The officers exchanged confused glances. Victor folded his arms. A grieving husband can imagine many things. Chief Adewale ignored him. My daughter disappeared. My wife's will disappeared. Company records disappeared. Witnesses disappeared. He looked each officer in the eye. How many disappearances become coincidence? Nobody answered. Victor slowly clapped. Impressively. Very emotional. Then he looked toward me again. Binta. His voice softened. You're intelligent. You've built a respectable career. You've overcome incredible hardship. He smiled warmly. I admire that. Something about his tone made my stomach tighten. He wasn't complimenting me. He was trying to control the conversation. Then he did something completely unexpected. He reached into his jacket and removed a check. He calmly signed it. Without writing an amount. Then held it toward me. A blank check. The entire room froze. You choose the number. Nobody spoke. Victor continued. 100 million naira. He smiled. 500 million. Still silence. 1 billion. Even the police officers looked shocked. The amount was unimaginable. Victor looked directly into my eyes. Take the money. Give me the backpack. And walk away. His voice remained calm. No court. No investigations. No danger. You'll become one of the wealthiest women in Nigeria overnight. The room became so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat. I looked at the check. Then at Victor. Then at the backpack. For a brief second. I remembered the 14-year-old girl who slept on a cold corridor floor. The girl who wore torn slippers. The girl who never received a salary. 1 billion naira. That little girl would once have believed such money could solve every problem. But I wasn't that girl anymore. Slowly. I stepped forward. Everyone watched. Victor smiled. Certain he had won. I accepted the check from his hand. His smile grew wider. Then, without saying a single word, I slowly tore the check in half. The sound echoed through the locker room. Rip. Then again. Rip. Again. Again. Small pieces of paper floated gently onto the floor. Victor stared at me in disbelief. The police officers looked stunned. Chief Adewale smiled proudly. Papa B quietly wiped away a tear. Mama B whispered. That's my daughter. I looked Victor directly in the eyes. My mother once wrote something. My voice remained calm. She said I wasn't born to make other people rich while my own dreams died. I held up the backpack. This isn't about money. It's about truth. Victor's face lost every trace of warmth. For the first time, the mask disappeared. The charming businessman vanished. In his place stood a desperate man. A dangerous man. His voice became cold. You have no idea what you're doing. I smiled. No. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Before Victor could answer, one of the female investigators Chief Adewale had secretly placed inside the station hurried into the room. She looked breathless. Sir. Chief Adewale turned. What is it? She held up her phone. You need to see this. Everyone gathered around. The screen displayed breaking news from a national television station. Across every channel appeared the same headline. Federal Anti-Corruption Agency announces major investigation into Lawson Group finances. Victor's face turned completely white. The investigator continued. They've frozen several company accounts. Another notification appeared. Then another. Then another. Journalists were gathering outside the station. Television crews. Reporters. Photographers. The story had leaked. Victor looked toward the exit. For the first time in 20 years. The man who had controlled everyone else was losing control himself. Chief Adewale smiled. Quietly. You always believed money could bury the truth. He nodded toward the growing crowd outside. But truth has a strange habit. It always finds daylight. The lead police officer slowly turned toward Victor. His expression had completely changed. Mr. Lawson. I'm going to need you to come with us for questioning. Victor looked around the room. At the officers. At the reporters gathering outside. At me. Then his eyes settled on the blue backpack. For the first time since we met. He looked defeated. Not because he had lost his money. Not because he had lost his company. Because he had lost the one thing he spent 20 years protecting. His secret. And as I held my mother's backpack close to my heart, I finally understood something. This journey had never been about becoming rich. It had never been about revenge. It had always been about a mother's love, a father's redemption, a family's healing, and one young woman who refused to let her past decide her future. Outside, the first camera flashes lit up the station entrance. A new chapter of my life was about to begin. And this time, the whole world would hear the truth. The morning after Victor Lawson was taken in for questioning, Nigeria woke up to a story that dominated every television station, newspaper, radio program, and social media platform. For years, people had admired him as one of the country's most successful businessmen. Now his smiling face appeared beneath very different headlines. Business empire under investigation. 20-year family secret finally revealed. Young beauty instructor at the center of Billionaire inheritance case. As reporters gathered outside the police headquarters, I remained far away from the cameras. Not because I was afraid. Because I had spent enough of my life being watched. For once, I wanted peace. Weeks later. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. The leather diary from the blue backpack became the most important piece of evidence. Inside it, my mother had carefully documented everything. Dates, meetings, bank transfers, company records, names of people she trusted, names of people she feared. She had even written why she believed her life was in danger. Every page matched records investigators later recovered from hidden archives. One by one, the truth emerged. Several executives confessed. Former employees stepped forward. Old witnesses who had been silent for years finally found the courage to speak. The lies that had survived for 2 decades began collapsing like a house built on sand. Victor Lawson was no longer able to control the story. For the first time in his life, money couldn't buy silence. A promise kept. One quiet afternoon, Chief Adewale and I visited my mother's grave together. Fresh flowers covered the simple white stone. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. The breeze moved gently through the trees. Birds sang somewhere nearby. It was peaceful. I knelt slowly and placed my hand on the stone. Mom. The word still felt new. But this time, it felt real. I finally found you. Tears filled my eyes. I read every letter. I found every clue. And I know now that you never stopped loving me. A single tear rolled down my cheek. But there's one promise I want to make today. I smiled through my tears. I won't spend the rest of my life chasing the people who hurt us. I'm going to spend it helping the people who need me. Chief Adewale quietly placed a bouquet beside the grave. I think she would be proud. I looked toward the sky and whispered. I hope so. 6 months later. The inheritance case officially ended. The court restored everything that legally belonged to my mother's estate. Many people expected me to celebrate. Instead, I made a different decision. The first check I received did not go toward buying a mansion. It did not go toward luxury cars. It did not go toward expensive jewelry. Instead, I bought an old building on the outskirts of Lagos. Everyone thought I was making a mistake. Until they saw what happened next. Renovations began immediately. Classrooms were built. Training salons were installed. Libraries were filled with books. Dormitories were prepared. A childcare room was added for young mothers. A counseling office welcomed girls carrying painful stories like mine. Months later, a large sign was placed above the entrance. The Adeobi Foundation for Young Women. Beneath it were smaller words. No dream should end because of poverty. The first day we opened our doors, more than 300 young women arrived. Some had dropped out of school. Some had escaped abusive homes. Some had never believed anyone would give them a chance. As I welcomed them, I saw pieces of my younger self in every face. Nervous smiles. Worn-out sandals. Hope hidden beneath fear. I smiled warmly. Welcome home. Several girls immediately began crying. So did I. #healing old wounds. One afternoon, while I was teaching a haircare class, someone knocked on my office door. It was Mama B. She looked nervous. Older. Gentler. In her hands was a small container. Food, she said shyly. I made your favorite jollof rice. I laughed. You still remember? She smiled through tears. I never forgot. We sat together for nearly 2 hours. Not talking about money. Not talking about court. Not talking about the past. Just sharing food. Sharing stories. Sharing peace. Before leaving, she quietly handed me a small envelope. Inside was the very first salary she believed she truly owed me. Every naira had been carefully saved. I looked at her. You don't have to do this. She smiled. I know. But I want to. I accepted it. Not because I needed the money. Because I understood what it represented. An apology. A changed heart. A chance to move forward. Papa B. Papa B never asked for anything. Not once. He continued living simply. Helping in the community. Praying every morning. Smiling every evening. One day I surprised him. I drove him to a quiet piece of land overlooking green fields. He looked confused. What are we doing here? I handed him a folder. He opened it slowly. His hands began shaking. The land belonged to him. Along with a beautiful house built especially for him on Mama B. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. My daughter. I smiled. You once gave me every naira you had. You believed in me before I believed in myself. This is only a small thank you. The old man hugged me tightly. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Sometimes, love doesn't need words. Bintu's dream. Bintu completed university with excellent grades. Instead of accepting a corporate job, she joined the foundation. Together, we traveled across villages, speaking to parents about educating girls. Every time we finished a seminar, someone would ask, "Why do you care so much?" Bintu always smiled before answering. Because one girl changed my life. Then she would point toward me. I always laughed and shook my head. But deep inside, I thanked God. 1 year later. The foundation celebrated its first anniversary. More than 1,000 young women had completed free vocational training. Hundreds had started their own businesses. Some had opened salons. Others had become makeup artists, fashion designers, entrepreneurs, and teachers. Several returned to become instructors themselves. Watching them walk confidently through the academy brought tears to my eyes. This was the inheritance my mother truly wanted me to protect. Not buildings. Not money. Not company shares. Hope. Opportunity. Dignity. The final surprise. As the celebration came to an end, Chief Adewale walked onto the stage. He smiled. I have one final announcement. I looked at him curiously. He held up a framed document. The board of our family company voted unanimously this morning. He paused dramatically. Beginning today, the company will officially sponsor every graduate of the Adeobi Foundation who wishes to start her own business. The audience erupted into applause. Some girls screamed with joy. Others hugged one another. I covered my face as tears streamed down my cheeks. My mother's dream. had become bigger than either of us ever imagined. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I walked through the empty classrooms. I stopped in front of a large mirror. Years ago, I used to stand before a mirror in Mama B's salon and wonder if anyone would ever see me. Back then, I saw a tired girl carrying other people's dreams. Now, I saw a woman living her own. I smiled at my reflection. Then quietly whispered, "You made it." Not because I became wealthy. Not because I recovered an inheritance. Not because justice was finally served. I made it because I refused to let pain become my identity. I chose hope. I chose forgiveness. I chose purpose. And that choice changed everything. As I switched off the lights and locked the academy for the night, I looked once more at the sign above the entrance. A little girl walking past with her mother stopped and read the words aloud. Then she looked up at her mother and smiled. "Mommy, one day I'm going to study there." Her mother squeezed her hand. "You will." I smiled quietly and continued walking beneath the evening sky. At that moment, I felt as though my mother was smiling too. Not because her daughter had become successful, but because her daughter had become the woman she always believed she could be. The end.